Thank you, Arturo. Just before to start, I would thank Andrea Pescatori and Stefano Sostero, which unfortunately leave us because they have to take a flight to Milan because are involved respectively in the investor meeting tomorrow morning, early morning, and Stefano Sostero is involved in a due diligence to close a deal. Anyway, I would thank again them for the effort to stay with us today. Thank you, Arturo, and I take the stage just to give you a brief outlook about the state of art.
Let's go. Thank you, Fabrizio.
Okay. So, the title of a session is quite self-explanatory. Is what happened to my banker? He said, what happened to my bankers? Skipping intro. So the picture for traditional banking looks quite gloomy. So the banks is walking away from the industry and becoming extremely selective. The bank market is practically totally dried, and the ship owner and the bankers are mutually worried. But it's not everything bad, as we will see, and probably so the outcome of this apparently negative situation may become positive if we consider some points. So the source of financing concretely halved through last decade, and the trend was exacerbated across last years, and not promising rosy for next times. Good point, Basel, so, for which we are working toughly, teaming up Confitarma and ABI, Italian Banker Association, is represented here by Mr. Raffaele Rinaldi, which I thank for the availability. And so Basel Committee implemented the harsher minimum capital requirements for the banks. The minimum capital equity requirements expected to mark the roughly the 13% at 2019, included the counter-cyclical buffers. And the situation is worse for shipping, whereas by last two Basel consultation, the committee proposed to increase the bank capital minimum requirements for the shipping for further 2.6%, bringing it at 15.6% at worst for the 2019. It's extremely penalizing if we compare the shipping asset class with the other ones like the real estate, particularly commercial real estate, for which the minimum capital requirement is roughly the half and respect the shipping. And for this we are struggling hardly to be recognized the eligibility of shipping mortgage as a mitigant of the risk. Now, standing the current capital structure, the banking still dominates among the sources of financing. Nevertheless, some of direct financing, i.e. bonds, is growing, but represent only a portion of the total funding for shipping. Considering the current order book, roughly $13 billion are practically unfunded. Traditional lending, the crucial point. Europe remains most relevant bank shipping market. USA stays quite marginal, since prefers to use the capital markets, both equity and capital market and bond market, to fund the sufficient funding for the shipping. In terms of cost, the banking market is changing, becoming selective, polarized, more cheaper, more funds to less ship owners. This is a quite interesting graph. And so, to provoke the discussion, but when I show it in Athens, in one of my last discussion, I got the reaction of the floor, showing that in respect to fleet size, the German market is hugely leveraged, especially if we compare it with the Greek market, for which a large portion of equity was used to fund the shipping investments. And continuing to a traditional lending, more than half of the first 13 shipping banks contracted largely their activities. Some of us downsizing their portfolios and shutting down the shipping desk. As a good example is RBS, which lead the ranking banking market, shipping market across the last 30 years. Bond market, where we stay. The direct financing became more popular in shipping industry through that capital market and especially by bond market. Nevertheless, the growth experienced in the last years remained quite restricted, quite limited to specific niches, i.e. the offshore or maritime infrastructure, and just in the limited areas, USA market, mostly USA market. Why is interesting the alternative in that? Because the shipping needs to buy flexibility, financial flexibility. I repeat this concept everywhere and every time. Probably I state my opinion as an outcome of a long experience in the shipping banking and the shipping investment, that probably the best way to ensure the financial flexibility is applying the structure in the hybrid debt. For this, I think that the private debt may represent a solution for the future of the funding in shipping industry. It's a comeback to the past when we leave the specialization in the banking system before the reform in Italy in 1994, when, as can witness Mr. Rinaldi, the bank activity was separated, clearly separated by retail banking and specialized lending, the former istituti di credito speciale in Italy. And so, the cost. And surely, on the side of lenders, we look for good satisfactions considering the potential upside expected when the debt, the pure debt, is combined with the structured debt, applying some specific legal frameworks or clauses like equity kickers or earn-out clauses. And coming to the private debt. As a private debt fund, and the numbers of funds and the amount, the size rise across last year accelerated sharply. A new number of funds and the amount grew, and the pace was very fast across last years. And also, if we'll see the angle of investors as well, the number of institutional investors and individuals is rising. The attention is attracted by the growth of private debt, due also the poor return offered by alternative similar fixed income asset class, like sovereign bonds. The free risk is, and the yield, a return expected by the high-rated debt and bonds and sovereign bonds is negative or quite close to zero. Private equity. The private equity largely disappointed the shipping and remains disappointed by the shipping. Why the reason? I think that the problem of private equity is not the instrument, but the method. I don't know if you agree, but the method was wrong. And the private equity theoretically is the most flexible instrument, but became a very rigid instrument. So, I don't know if the private equity will come back to invest in the shipping. I think my answer is negative, no. To conclude, so, therefore we are living the transition from the traditional banking, and is a good picture to provoke the discussion after. So, the traditional banker, the way to think of a traditional bank is lends you the umbrella when it's sunny and wants it back when it rains, and probably the contribute to change could come from the private debt, for which I can bring you use the quote of Andrew Jackson when he stated that take time to deliberate, but when time to the action arrives, stop thinking and go in. Thank you very much.